Hi guys, this is Hero. How's everyone doing today? Ajima the Game Show. Sub Kesuho. Today I'm going over how everyone these days is gambling with all aspects of their life. Okay, and it's important to become aware about this so that way you can probably stop doing this and prevent any future harm. Right? People gamble in many different ways. Right? It's not just going to the casino or doing some sports betting or something like that. It's throughout all aspects of their life, which I'll cover as much as I can in this video. But the top two main ways I've seen people do this that I believe is harming them the most is with their health and with their partners, okay? I'll start out with the partners first because it's a little bit easier to understand. With your partners, there is a growing trend of gambling, right? And what I mean by that is having a grass is greener on the other side mindset, right? Anytime you have that mindset, you're taking a chance, but this is turning, this habit is kind of getting out of control, okay? Where people, if they have, a pretty good situation with their partner or something like that, they will, take a chance on, leaving and finding somebody better. Or if they're talking to someone, not necessarily, settling down with that person, you're kind of gambling and taking a chance on finding somebody else. And the con there is that, you're not really giving a possibly benefic situation to you a chance to kind of bloom, naturally, if that makes sense, because you're still entertaining outside parties, right? And with your health, we do this without realizing. And how we do this is, let's just say there is a unhealthy food, right? It's really like oily or, processed or sugary, whatever, right? Or even with alcohol, we will consume these things. And I'll just talk about the food aspect right now, right? We will consume these things and kind of gamble in the sense that, if I eat this, I won't feel like complete crap in, X amount of hours, right? Or if I eat this, I won't actually, gain as much weight as I think, or I won't actually feel as bloated as I would, or whatever, right? You guys get the point, right? We always take a gamble, right? And I'm not excluded. Most of the people, are not excluded, right? When there's a fried dish or a cheesy dish or whatever, right? You kind of convince yourself that this one time's okay, even though it's doomed from the start, right? And there's certain parallels that you can see in actual traditional gambling, like at a casino, and with this, right? If you're playing blackjack after so much amount of time, your money's gonna go, right? It's the same thing here, right? You can't eat fried cheesy foods, fried cheese sticks or whatever forever, right? You just can't do that, but you just get in the habit of, there's only so much you can drink, right? Alcohol wise over a consistent period of time. So in these two ways, I'd recommend that you stop, right? With the partners, especially, right? Because this, I think, is more extreme because it's actually ruining your life at a bigger scale. But with the health also, because yes, I mean, eating unhealthy one time is not going to do anything. But if you let this compound, it kind of gets out of control, okay? Now, moving on from those two, other ways is, yes, I talked about money, right? With like actual, gambling, like at a casino or something. But I'll just touch on this real quick with, certain investments or stuff like that. Everybody wants to be rich these days, right? Everybody wants to be the show-off person on social media. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But just, again, make sure you really know what you're doing and make sure it makes sense, right? Like, if this was so super quick and successful, why isn't everyone doing it, right? Ask yourself these kinds of questions. But besides actual, money, there's also, career-wise, right? We like to gamble, right? Oh, if we leave this job, we will get something else that will do, that will pay us more, or that, we feel more respected or powerful or whatever, right? So that's also an aspect that you really need to consider when it comes to, gambling, right? So I discussed, so far your health, your own self, right? We like to gamble with other people. I just mentioned the thing about relationships, but these days we're also gambling, with our time and like not just relationships, like, your significant other, like, your friendships and stuff like that, right? we have certain people who support us in life, whether it's, family, friends, family, very close friends that we've had for a long time. And we like to, gamble those away or to, kind of build up other possibly newer and more superficial relations, even though, just because the ego is not satisfied with what's going on right now, right? And that's the root cause here. As I cross over the 5-minute line, I will, kind of transition into this next point. That's the root cause here, right? The root cause of gambling is internal unhappiness, okay? For the most part, right? I've seen some people go to the casino and, they're just having a blast and they lose $100 or $200, $300, whatever. And then that's the end of it. They don't think about it anymore. But that's not really the common consensus, and especially for this video's purpose, right? If you're taking some of these kinds of risks in your daily life, there might be an underlying factor of unhappiness here, right? And this is not something that I would just try to suppress and drown away in whatever vice that you're doing this, right? And that's what vices are, right? Vices is a form of gambling, right? You are gambling that whatever you're doing is not going to cause harm, even though most likely the thing that you're doing is probably causing harm, right? And gambling even extends past the physical, right? It can go into the mental, okay? And the mental does affect, how things are on the physical. For example, you have to have a certain mindset of, gambling, like a certain mindset of willing to gamble away a certain stable relationship for, a better one, quote unquote, right? But this bleeds out all over the place, right? With your overall philosophy or religion of life, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with including, different perspectives in life. This is something that I do, right? I like to look at, all religions and stuff like that. But if you're somebody who just, bounces around and just is all in on one philosophy and then very short amount of time later, all in on another philosophy, and you kind of notice this pattern, again, this is a form of gambling, right? The thing that religion, yeah, it's great, right? But it can sometimes bring people, to very prideful states, right? So what happens is, and that pride gives very illusionary happiness. When that runs out, what could happen is you could find another source to, fuel that, right? And then that keeps going into this endless kind of loop here. So just also be aware that this can go beyond, many different, areas of life. Okay. It's not just strictly, with one thing, right? But I believe, and if you look at the common society today, right, people are kind of going towards extremes, right? Politically, socially, whatever, right? And it kind of fuels this go big or go home, grass is greener on the other side kind of mindset, okay? And like I said, if you feel yourself kind of going towards these extremes, it could be kind of fueled, and I'm not gonna say it could, it is fueled by a root cause of unhappiness, right? And if that is the situation that you're in, that is not anything to be, it's great. It's just a great start that you're realizing that, so that way you can handle it, right? And then if you're just wondering real quick how to, go from a state of unhappiness to a state of happiness, I have a couple videos on this, right? But you're gonna want to basically, in a nutshell, accept your fears, accept the fact that, certain expectations that you might have may not come true, and there's a bunch of them, but I'd probably say those are the top two, okay? But as I'm approaching 10 minutes, okay, I'm gonna end this video, but just keep that in mind, okay? Anytime where, there's nothing wrong with change in life, right? But, and this is where you gotta really, I'm not really trying to tell you what to do, nor should anybody else really tell you what to do, right? It's about, instilling the right kind of mindset, right? Instilling the right kind of thought patterns and kind of wisdom to, really mold some sort of spiritual development in a very grounded way, right? So that's that, okay? And add to one more thing, right? With the actual spiritual community, right? They have the tendency to, potentially promote the most kind of a gambling mindset in the name of spirituality, right? This is all nonsense, okay? Like, you know, I'll just say it like that, right? There's a lot of ungroundedness, and if it doesn't make sense, you don't need to follow anybody blindly, okay? Just because, you know, how much ever they smile or use positive words or whatever, okay? But that's it for this video. If you have any questions or comments, you can feel free to let me know. And until next time, I will talk to everyone later. Thank you all very, very much for watching.